The Shadowdark RPG is a fantasy adventure game where you and your companions delve into buried ruins, lost cities, spider-infested forests, and even fearsome dragon lairs in search of gold and glory. The Shadowdark is any place where danger and darkness hold sway. It clutches ancient secrets and dusty treasures in its rotting claws, daring fortune seekers to tempt their fates. It is the mythical underworld. It has a mind of its own, and it wants you dead. But if you survive, you'll bring back untold riches plucked from the jaws of death itself. You've returned to town to spend your hard-earned gold on whatever you wish. But gold is spent easily, and before long, you'll hear the Shadowdark's call once again. So how do you play? You're going to need a set of dice and a character sheet. If this is your first time playing Shadowdark, it's helpful to start with a pre-made character. A number of choices will be provided for you. The character sheet has a number of important values on it, but it's not the end of your character. Remember that the thinking, decision-making, and tactics are not on your character sheet. That's on you. You decide on your character's actions and tell them to the referee, or dungeon master, hereafter referred to as the DM. The DM determines if your actions are successful and describes the results. This back and forth between you, the DM, and your adventuring companions grows and shapes the game world. On your turn, describe an action you want to do. For example, you could say that you're going to shoot your bow at a troll. The DM might ask you to make a check to determine whether your action succeeds. A check is a roll of a 20-sided die, also called a d20, usually with a modifier. The DM chooses the check's linked stat, although the player can of course make an argument on which stat to relate. If the total of the d20 and the modifier is greater than the difficulty of the action, your action succeeds. So, what's actually on your character sheet? Your stats are your character's characteristics. What are they good at, and what are they terrible at? Each stat has a score that goes from 3 to 18 and has a bonus or penalty related to it called a modifier that ranges from -4 to +4, which is what is actually added to rolls. Your character's strength is its physical power. Can you swing a sword or force open doors? The dexterity stat is your agility, your reflexes. Can you aim a bow, pass unseen in shadows, or dodge a trap? Your character's constitution is your endurance, your resistance to injury. Can you withstand poison or going without food? Your intelligence is your logical ability. How well can you cast wizard spells or learn languages? Your wisdom is your instinct and willpower. How well can you cast priest spells? Can you notice the unseen and resist magical domination? Your charisma is your character's appeal and presence. Can you command others, and what do they think of you? When you become injured, you take damage and lose hit points. Characters can recover hit points by resting at night. Characters at 0 hit points are considered dying and will die in 1d4 plus your con modifier in rounds. Characters at negative HP die then and there. When a character dies, they are retired from play. Next on your sheet is your character's ancestry, their cultural and ancestral heritage. This gives your character a small bonus and informs what languages your character knows. A dwarf, for example, starts with extra HP, rolls their HP with advantage, and probably knows the dwarvish language. Next is your character's class, their job in the adventuring party. Fighters can be blood-soaked gladiators on the front line or far-eyed elven archers. Priests are prophetic shamans or crusading Templars fighting in the name of their gods, a kind of bridge between the fighter and the wizard. Wizards are bespectacled magi or flame-conjuring adepts manipulating the fell forces of magic. And of course, thieves are assassins and con artists there to climb and sneak and open locks. As you level up, your class will give you talent rolls, which increase your stats or give you a special ability. Your character's background is their history and past experience before they were an adventurer. You will have skills that you can tie into your background. A sailor might be good at tying knots, or a ranger might be good at finding a game trail through the woods, or a surgeon at quickly stabilizing a dying party member. Your character's level starts at 1 and goes through to 10, gaining traits and stat bonuses through the accumulation of experience points or XP. You gain XP based on the treasures you plunder from the mythical underworld and return to town, spending it lavishly. To advance in level, you need to earn your current level times 10 in XP. Once you reach a new level, your total XP resets back to 0. Characters gain XP from valuable treasures and spending their money on carousing. Each player in the party gains the full XP from the treasure, and there are 4 tiers of XP rewards. The first, of course, is trash. Anything under 100 gold is worth 0 XP. 1 XP is rewarded for about 100 gold worth of treasure. For example, a gem, some finely crafted armor, or a spell on a magic scroll. A more permanent magic item, a giant diamond or mithril chainmail, is worth about 3 XP. Completing a quest or a great deed is also worth about 3 XP. You will be rewarded 10 XP for recovering mythic, unique, or quest-worthy reward. For example, the Staff of Ord or a dragon's hoard worth of loot. 10 XP can also be rewarded for pacifying an important section of the mythical underworld. Next on your character sheet is alignment. This is your character's cosmic link to the opposing forces of law and chaos. The gods are at war here, and you are their instrument. Significantly impactful actions and decisions, as well as certain magic items, can shift your alignment. Your title is based on your class, level, and alignment, and may affect how people perceive you. Your gear and inventory. This is your equipment. You can carry a number of items equal to 10 or your strength stat, whichever is higher. 100 coins can fit into one item slot, as well as most items such as a torch. Some pieces of gear, such as some weapons or armor, require multiple slots to carry. Items in your inventory can be carried and used, but you only have 2 hands, so you can't hold a weapon, a shield, and a torch. Keep track of what is in your hands. The weapon you wield can be used for attacks. To keep track of how well you use each weapon and how much damage they do, you can record them in the attacks section. For example, Sildar the warrior fights with his greatsword at +5 on the rolls and deals 1d12 +1 damage when he hits, whereas Mr. Potter the wizard here, when he is forced into melee, fights with his dagger at -1 on the rolls and deals 1d4 damage. Talents are your special abilities. Your class, ancestry, and talent rolls grant you these. Known spells are also recorded here. Spellcasters use different methods to bend reality to their will. Wizard magic is complicated and volatile. Even the most learned of mages tread carefully when reaching beyond the veil. Priest magic is miraculous and sacred, but also fickle. Priests who offend their gods might lose the ability to cast spells until they undertake penance. When you cast a spell, you invoke magic to cause an effect. Wizards are intelligence spellcasters, so they roll a d20 and add their intelligence modifier. Priests are wisdom spellcasters, and so add their wisdom modifiers instead. The difficulty to cast a spell is 10 plus the tier of the spell you are trying to cast. On a success, you cast that spell. On a failure, the spell does not take effect, and you can't cast that spell until you rest. On a critical success, you can double one of the spell's numerical effects. On a critical failure, the spell does not take effect and additional effects happen. If you are a wizard, you must roll on magical mishaps. If you're a priest, your deity is greatly displeased and you can't cast that spell again until you undertake penance. Wizard magical mishaps may cause you to glow purple for 10 rounds, or you may tear a hole in the fabric of the universe, killing you and everyone else around you instantly. Penance may cause you to visit a shrine and donate a small amount of money, or go on a holy quest to atone for your transgressions. So to recap, your fledgling character will start with stats, a background, ancestry, a class, one class talent roll, health, a title, an alignment, some gear, and maybe some magic. Off to the mythical underworld to get rich or die trying. But how do you actually play Shadowdark? The first step to surviving the Shadowdark is understanding your environment and imagining an action you want to take. Don't simply scour your character sheet for ideas and options. Your crawling career depends on your ability to think outside the sheet. For example, do you see a suit of armor in an alcove? Maybe you lift the helm's visor and make sure nothing is looking back at you. Do you hear faint voices behind a rotting wooden door? Maybe you creep up and press your ear against it to hear what's happening on the other side. Is a band of orcs chasing you and your companions down a hallway? Maybe try tearing the decrepit tapestries from the wall to hamper their pursuit. None of these ideas are listed on a character sheet. Although you should use your stats, spells, gear, and talents, don't limit yourself to only those. Here's some more examples where your stats may be used while adventuring. Strength: smashing open locked doors, bending the bars of a prison cell or sewer grate, lifting a large rock overhead, stopping a runaway ship's helm from spinning. For dexterity, diving away from a trap that flings a hail of needles, disabling a tripwire without activating it, scaling a sheer castle wall, or fooling onlookers with sleight-of-hand tricks. For constitution, holding your breath underwater, withstanding intense pain, or resisting the effects of a poison. The difference between intelligence and wisdom can get tricky. If in doubt, remember wisdom is for sensory acuity and instinct, while intelligence covers knowledge and logic. Examples of intelligence include giving first aid to a dying character, recalling the path through a twisting maze, finding food and water sources in the wilderness. Whereas wisdom might be spotting a well-hidden enemy, determining the direction of a faint noise or smell, or deciphering the sounds on the other side of a door. Lastly, charisma might be performing ventriloquism, applying a disguise, or rallying allies who are terrified by a monster. So, when do you actually need to roll for a check? Usually, you succeed what you're trained to do without needing to roll. When actions are taken, 4 things are checked. Does your character have the skills required? Do they have tools? Would there be an effect from your failure? And do they have the time to easily retry? If the answer to all 4 is a yes, your character or group succeeds without a roll after a turn. If it's only 3, you should roll a check. If it's 1 or 2, you roll that check with disadvantage. If there's none, you can't attempt without a great explanation. There's no need usually to be overly specific about actions that have all 4, since they take time, you have skills, and support. You will succeed unless there are mitigating circumstances. You search the room and find the hidden passageway. You walk down the hallway carefully and identify traps. You listen at the door and hear a conversation or shuffling after around 10 minutes. Unless there are mitigating circumstances like magic or something very strange is going on. So let's go over conditions of rolling the dice. When you have advantage on a roll, it means you're in a strong position to succeed. For example, you might be attacking from a high ground, or you might just have failed at a task and now have insight into how to succeed if you try it again. To roll with advantage, roll the same die twice and use the better result. When you have disadvantage on a roll, it means you're in a strong position to fail. For example, you might be trying to strike an enemy while blinded by sand, or navigating a maze while confused by disorienting poison. To roll with disadvantage, roll the same die twice and use the worse result. If you have both advantage and disadvantage on a roll, they cancel each other out. When a d20 die roll shows a 20, what you're doing succeeds to your maximum capacity. An attack roll automatically hits and is a critical hit. When a d20 roll shows a 1, what you're doing fails to the maximum capacity. An attack roll automatically misses and might even strike an ally. Let's go over some standard difficulties on how difficult actions are. Leaping over a narrow chasm or sneaking up on an inattentive guard might be an easy difficulty, so you'd have to roll a 9 or higher. Kicking open a stuck door or picking a poor lock might be normal difficulty, so a 12 or better. Swimming against a strong current, Giving first aid to stop a character from dying is difficult, and so would need a 15 or better. Climbing a slippery cliff one-handed or restraining a frenzied lion is extremely difficult, so rolling an 18 or better is needed to succeed. Overland survival is one of the main phases of the game outside the dungeon and outside of town. Travel takes place on a hex map with standard 6-mile hexes. Random encounters are checked twice per day and at night. The travel day is around 12 hours, and the party travels 2 miles per hour. Different travel methods have different distances that you go per day. When you walk, you travel 4 hexes or 24 miles in a day. That increases when you're mounted. Certain terrains will be normal, difficult, or impossible terrain. Difficult terrains such as swamps, jungles, hill, heavy forest, or desert take twice as long to traverse. Impossible terrain cannot be crossed without proper equipment and includes mountains, rivers, and oceans. You start each overland day with a weather check on a d6. On a 1, the weather is bad. Normal terrain becomes difficult, and difficult terrain becomes impossible. On a 6, the weather is excellent, and you roll the next day with advantage. Roads and trails turn impossible terrain into difficult terrain, making it possible to hike mountains and cross rivers. They are also turn difficult terrain into normal terrain. Food and water. Player characters can go for 3 days without consuming a ration while at rest. They take 1d4 constitution damage per day afterwards, dying at 0 constitution. A player can forage 1 ration a day with an intelligence check. The forced march. At the start of the day, the party can choose to push themselves and travel 50% farther, increasing the odds of a random encounter and preventing foraging, but going much further during the day. Searching a hex for a hidden location takes a full day, and the location will be found unless there are mitigating circumstances. The next major phase of the game is dungeon crawling. Any place that does not contain natural light is the domain of the mythic underworld and is cast in total darkness. While in total darkness, a character has disadvantage on any tasks it undertakes, and the environment becomes deadly, with random encounter checks occurring every round. Light sources, such as torches, lamps, or a magic light, last for about an hour, broken into d6 plus 4 crawling rounds. And light sources must be declared as being held by a character. A light must be held by a party member, which takes a hand, preventing it from being used for anything else. During a single crawling round, the party makes actions as a group. Random encounter checks are made with frequency depending on the danger level of the dungeon, which can range from unsafe every 3 rounds, risky every 2 rounds, or pitch darkness every round. Here's an example of a series of crawling rounds during which the party rolled a 2 plus 4 in an unsafe area. In the party's first action, they search a room. In the second action, they walk down a hallway carefully. In the third action, which triggers the first encounter check, they listen at a door. Action 4, they're picking that door's lock. Action 5, they're attacking the monsters and looting them. Action 6, during the second encounter check, a new light source is required while they search the room. Actions as a group may be moving 30 feet down a hallway, exploring a room thoroughly, listening at a door, or any other dungeon action that the party might want to pursue. Remember that with skills, tools, and time, you automatically succeed at uncontested actions. There are certain player roles during exploration that make the game flow more smoothly. The caller, or leader, declares exploration and travel actions on behalf of the party. Everyone can and should ask questions, discuss options, and strategize, but the caller has final say in what action the party takes next. This only applies during dungeon or overland travel, not individual camp activities or actions taken during combat. The mapper is responsible for mapping the world and its dungeons during travel and exploration. The map doesn't need to be a work of art. It can even be a flowchart of boxes and lines, but it should be clear enough to hand off to another person. Don't be afraid to ask for clarifications, as properly mapping can reveal hidden rooms in dungeons. Finally, the chronicler tracks what the party does through the session. There doesn't have to be more than a brief bullet point list describing important actions taken, but should describe places visited and important people talked with. A well-chronicled campaign allows the party to quickly bring a player up to speed if they missed a session or two. At the start of a session, the chronicler should be able to summarize the events of the previous session. In the dungeon, a marching order would be wise to consider. Generally, in a 10-foot hallway, the party can stand in rows of 2. Example marching order roles fall into 4 categories: the scouts, the van, the main, and the rear. Scouts explore slightly ahead of the party, detecting traps, finding signs of danger, and acting as the face of the party. They can attempt to hide, since they would be far from the light. During a combat, they generally run back to the rear. The van is the front line of the party and ends up in close melee fighting. The main is behind the very front line, and so longer weapons are required to strike in melee. This is generally where the light should be kept. The rear is the back of the party and often must resort to missile weapons or magic, and missing may be hazardous to those up front. When a fight breaks out, combat phase begins. First, we determine if anyone is surprised. A creature or party that surprises another takes 1 combat action before initiative is rolled. Initiative is the turn ordered during combat. Everyone makes a dexterity check, and the person with the highest dexterity check goes first, then clockwise. Actions during combat can include a melee attack, a ranged attack, casting a spell, or improvising something, such as swinging on a vine or flipping a switch. Remember that you are under a time limit and there would be effects from failure, so you often have to roll for success in actions during combat. Light sources are generally targets for monsters and the dungeon itself, so be careful. Dropped light sources have a 3 in 6 chance of going out. Marching order during combat matters, because while you can easily shuffle past your allies and rearrange your order, you can't do that to your enemies. There are no attacks of opportunity. That means the van will always be targeted by melee and most ranged attacks, and those in the van will not be able to attack the back ranks of the enemy before fighting through. Many enemies will not fight to the death. Morale checks occur to enemies who are reduced to half their number, or half HP. The check is 2d6 versus their morale stat, and if the roll is over their stat, they flee or surrender. The morale stat may be modified, or the roll can be caused early through player character actions, such as taking out the enemy captain. Random encounters are a way to keep time pressure up and put a strain on party resources. If the characters linger too long, they run the risk of more encounters. In general, random encounters are checked in the overworld twice per day and twice at night, with a 1 in 6 chance of occurring. The things that appear during random encounters vary wildly depending on where you are in the world. The nearby layer may fill most of the entries on the list. In contrast, there may be rare or especially dangerous entities that only have a single entry. If random encounters occur, the DM will roll for how many monsters appear, if they have treasure on them, their distance from the group, what they're doing, if they or the party are surprised, and their reaction to the party, modified by the charisma of the lead player character. Here's an example of a random encounter table. On a 1 to 2, 1d6 plus 2 goblins are returning from raiding. On a 3, there's 3d6 plus 2 goblins on a patrol, including captain and a shaman. On a 4, there's 3d10 antelope grazing on a field. On a 5, you run into a black bear and a cub. And on a 6, an adult red dragon flies overhead. Make a normal dex check to hide in the underbrush or be spotted. Not all random encounters end in bloodshed, even the antelopes. As mentioned previously, when a random encounter is rolled, the DM also rolls distance from the party. In the overworld, that may be hundreds of feet away, or right on top of you if you're not paying attention. In the dungeon, it's possible to hear a random encounter coming, or they may burst straight through a door. If the encounter is far enough away, the party may have time to avoid it. The DM also rolls the monster's reaction to the party. This is a 2d6 plus charisma modifier on the face of the party. If it's not hostile, you may have a chance to roleplay your way out of danger. If you say or do the correct things, a reroll with an additional +2 modifier may turn a suspicious goblin friendly. Alternatively, say the wrong thing, and an initially neutral kobold may turn hostile. At night, characters must rest or forego consuming a ration or healing. Injured characters can rest to recover from their wounds. In order to take a rest, a player character must consume a ration and sleep for 8 hours. Sleep can be broken for light tasks such as an uneventful watch. When sleep is interrupted, make a constitution check or the ration is wasted. A character that rests regains 1 hit die per level in HP and recovers 1 point of non-permanent stat damage, along with talents, spells, or items. If no character is on watch during a random encounter, the party is automatically surprised. Additionally to a rest, a campfire can be made to produce light and keep away unthinking monsters. When a campfire is made, only roll a single overnight encounter check. Campfires can be made of harvested wood or 3 torches. Each player character can do 1 task while camping and still benefit from a full rest. The default of a camping check is 12. Resting in town, or downtime and carousing. Health returns at the same rate as in the wilderness, but there are no chances for random encounters at night if you've paid for your rooms in an inn. That's not to say that you'll never be attacked, though. Between adventuring sessions, you can choose to undertake a downtime activity. This may be learning, searching for rumors or information, spiritualism, skullduggery, martial training, magical research, hiring henchmen, or anything else your character may want to do. Certain downtime activities may require an associated check. I can provide more details on these actions during downtime. Characters can also go carousing as their downtime activity to gain bonus XP. To carouse, each participant pitches in for the cost of the event, and then separately, each participant rolls 1d8 plus that event's bonus to determine their own outcome. So a 30 gold night of drinking will give you just the d8 roll on the table, while spending 3,000 gold on two legendary weeks of debauchery will give you a +8 to your roll. Live like a king and spread your legend to level up faster. A character's renown can grow over time and increase their fame and infamy. Having a high renown confers benefits, and dying with great renown is the goal of many adventurers. Renown starts out being equal to a character's charisma mod, which can be negative. You gain renown by increasing in level, being honored for your deeds, and extravagant public spending through carousing. You can lose renown through public humiliation, a negative run-in with the law, being frugal publicly, or offending a person of a higher status. When you get rich enough, you may no longer want to hold a torch or lug around piles of gold yourself, and when you die, you may not want to start over at level 1 again. This is where followers come in. Characters can have a total number of followers equal to their charisma mod, minimum of 1. Players control them in combat, but they are roleplayed by the DM. During the hiring, make a hidden charisma check. On a 9 or less, the follower has ill will towards the party, and future tests are made with disadvantage. On a 20 or greater, future loyalty tests are made with advantage. The first type of follower is a hireling. They are 0-level commoners and do not gain XP. Normal townsfolk looking to make a few coins, but not willing to die for the cause. They follow the party after the way is clear, and only fight if their life is threatened and can't escape. They're good for holding torches and carrying loot. Hirelings expect a daily wage, and the amount offered affects the charisma check made during hiring and loyalty tests. Hirelings come with the clothes on their back and maybe a knife. Anything else must be supplied by the party. For their loyalty checks, make a DC 12 charisma check if a hireling is ever exposed to something dangerous, and a DC 9 charisma check after each adventure. On a failure, the hireling leaves and cannot be rehired. The other class of follower are retainers. Retainers are NPCs that have class levels and associated skills, but gain 1/2 of the XP. They are mercenaries and sellswords that will accompany the party in dungeon delving and other activities including combat. They will not hire on to parties with an average level equal or lower than their own, and they expect a share of the treasure found. In the event of your character dying, you can choose to continue playing as your retainer, but must re-roll the hiring loyalty of your remaining followers. Retainers come with weapons, armor, and class-specific equipment. Everything else is supplied by the player parties. In their loyalty checks, you make a DC 6 charisma check if the retainer is exposed to anything dangerous, and after each adventure. On a failure, the retainer leaves to adventure with their own party and cannot be rehired. As you explore the world of Shadowdark and complete quests, you may be granted rewards and an excess of money. Exploring the world may grant you additional class options for future characters, and a character can build a bastion constructed by clearing a hex and paying for labor and materials for its construction. Bastions provide safe shelter from weather, climate, and random encounters. They also provide an opportunity to use your renown to speak with other town leaders and expand your territory and influence. Get out there, your gold and renown awaits.